tablets a second time. Remember, the first time he came down, they were destroyed, the people had worshipped the golden calf. And so he went up a second time and came down with the tablets again. And as they were to go and prepare to proceed into the land, God says, what do I require? And he summarizes. He summarizes those 2 tablets of stone when he says, and love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And as you pay attention to the whole reading, he then goes on to talk about caring about the orphan and the foreigner, the sojourner, because you once were orphaned, you once were foreigners, and you once were slaves. There was a time when you were only 70 people. Now as a nation, you're as numerous as the stars of heaven. The Lord's the one who did all of that. What does he require of you? Love him. All your heart, soul, mind, strength. The second is like it. Love your neighbor, yourself. This is not a New Testament idea. It's found as a thread woven throughout all of the text. But in Matthew 22, you see it again when Jesus is specifically asked. If you ever had any doubt in your mind as to how important an idea this was, Jesus, when asked, what is the greatest commandment, simply says, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and your soul and with all your mind. And this is the great and the foremost commandment. It should be in the forefront of your mind. It's the most important. Second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And then Jesus makes this statement in Matthew, on these 2 commandments depend the whole law and the prophets. And I like the old-timey translation a little bit more. If you have a King James, or I think a New King James will do the same thing. It will say, on these 2 commandments hang the whole law and the prophets. And in that case, that is a very literal translation. That is the word there. It is for hanging. And you think about it, if you're going to hang something, if I have a chandelier, the most important part of the chandelier is not all the shiny bits. It's the part that attaches to the roof. Because it doesn't matter how many shiny crystals it has, it doesn't matter how much it glistens in the light, it doesn't matter how brilliant and beautiful and awe-inspiring and opulent it is if it falls. There is a hanging point for the law and the prophet. And that hanging point is to love God and love your neighbor. It is the thing from which all of the other things stem off of. It's the thing that they all depend on. You can follow all the law of the Old Testament. Because remember, as Jesus quotes this in Matthew 22, that's all they had was the Old Testament. They didn't have the New Testament that you and I have now. That had not yet been written. You can follow all the rules. You could tithe exactly. You can make all the burnt offerings at all the right times, all the wave offerings and the sin offerings. You can make all of the festivals, and you can have the best booth out there on the Feast of Booths. But it wouldn't matter. Had not love. And 1 Corinthians 13 will emphasize that idea, that even if I sacrifice my body to be burned for the sake of the Lord, if I have not love, it is worth nothing. It is the hanging point that the chandelier hangs from. There's another sense in which that word hang is used. On these 2 commandments hang the whole law and the prophets. That is not just a word for hang, it is a very specific word. And your Bible does not have mistakes, and the details matter. It's the word that is used for hanging on the cross. When we talk about somebody being crucified, they are hung on a cross. And the whole purpose of a cross is to, instead of hanging from above, you actually hang from below. You rise them up. And the Romans did it for a nefarious purpose, or at least a point of emphasizing and bringing attention to wickedness. They would hang people in prominent places outside of a city, and they would put them on these crosses, and rise them up to a position and then put what they had done above them so that everybody who left the city and everybody who entered the city would know, I don't want to be like that one. This is what happens to thieves and insurrectionists and murderers. And you and I know this is also what happens to the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. And if you pay close attention to the reading in Deuteronomy 10, one of the things that is mentioned about loving, what does the Lord require of you? But to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and strength. He talks about the kind of God He is. He is the God who is above all kings, above all lords. You see, when you look at Jesus on the cross, you are seeing Him risen up for all to see. He followed all the law and the prophets. He did all of the festivals you had to make, He made. Every Sabbath He kept. Every commandment His Father had given, He behaved in a way that was appropriate. He obeyed it. But when you see Jesus on the cross, you don't go, look at that guy who obeyed God. That's not what you say. When you and I think of Jesus on the cross, you don't think of, look at that guy who did all the right things. You say, look at that guy who loves me. Look at that man who loves me and loved his Father. Because in the Garden of Gethsemane, why does He tell it? We hear His prayer. Why does He go to the cross? Because He loved His Father. And not my will, but my Father's will be done. When Jesus says, on these two commandments depend or hang the whole law and the prophets, I think there is an illusion going on there. He's pointing forward to something that He was about to face. You want to love. You want to really show God's greatness through His laws. You want to follow His prophecies. You want to fulfill the Scriptures. You want to elevate it. You're going to have to love. And so love does two things. It becomes the anchor point that we depend on. But it also becomes the thing that elevates all righteous behavior. Because righteous behavior without love is irritating to everybody around them. We all know that guy who's always right. And he's irritating. But when there's love, all of a sudden it changes the tone of things. As you look here, there's several things that we're going to look at this morning. One is, there are only three things that matter in this passage. Only three things that matter. Everything else is ornamentation and detail supporting these three things that are central. One, you. This command is for you. It's not for other people. If your thought is, other people need to love God, and the world would be a better place if other people love their neighbor, you've not read the passage. The passage is not for them, it's for you. You shall love the Lord your God. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. That's the first thing. The second is God. Central, as Jesus says, this is the great and foremost commandment, is God. And then in the second commandment, there's one other major noun, and it's people. Your neighbor. And we find out your neighbor is anybody that you come in contact with that you can do any good for in any way. Anybody you have opportunity to love. And it's interesting, the bigger the world gets, the more that we find that as we learn about things happening at great, vast distances from us, in places we'll likely never visit, the more information we have about the vast, wide world, the more impotent we feel. I now know more about what's going on in other countries than any generation prior has ever known. Not only can I know what the news sources tell me, I can get on things like Twitter, and I can go follow people who live in those countries, and I can find out what their life is like. I can go on Instagram and find people in other countries and look at what they eat and what pictures they take of their cats. I can know all these things. And yet I have the same amount of power to do something about somebody in Dubai as I did before. Yeah, I know a lot more, but how has it done anything? I have no more ability to impact things tens of thousands of miles away than I did before. Your life is always going to be those three things. You, God, your neighbor. That's it. And at the end of your life, those are going to be the only things that really matter. In Mark chapter 8, Jesus will say, "For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul?" Name the last three CFOs of Amazon. It's a really big company with an amount of business that it does, an economy so big that it's bigger than many developed nations. Amazon is huge. Name the last three CFOs. Do you even know if they've had three CFOs? You don't know any of it. Right? We follow celebrities until they're not celebrities anymore. Name the top 10 hits from 1983. There may be some guy on Jeopardy who could do it, but most people can't name those things. Name the last 5 vice presidents. Second most powerful person in America. I would argue most of you couldn't name the first vice president. Some of you are like, I can do that one. I understand, geek. But most of you can't. Like, most people are not even history buffs enough to know that. You're like, yeah, I got George Washington. I got Abraham Lincoln. There were some others between. Even major industries here in Louisville, name who's the head, the CEO of GE. Some of you know, and some of you also work at GE. But I bet you a lot of you don't. Name the last 5 Kentucky Derby winners. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Those 3 CFOs, when they die, which I'm assuming they're all alive. I didn't even look it up. There may not be 3 CFOs of Amazon. I don't know. I don't care. But I will tell you, when they die, all their customers will not show up at their funeral. You know who will be at their funeral? Family, maybe some close friends, maybe a distant relative that's looking for some inheritance. Your life. It's not the stuff, it's not the bigger barns. It's all going to come down to you, God. Ecclesiastes chapter 1, vanity of vanities, said the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What profit has a man of all his labor which he takes under the sun? The answer is nothing. There's no profit save to serve the Lord your God. Love your neighbor as yourself. In life, do not forget what matters. Every day is an opportunity to forget. We normally talk about opportunities to remember things or to learn things, but actually most of our life is an opportunity to forget stuff. To get distracted, to get busy. Every day is an opportunity that the devil has to get you distracted from the 3 things that matter. And if what you are doing is not good for your soul, it does not enhance your relationship with God, and it doesn't do good for your neighbor, it doesn't matter. At all. I'm not saying it doesn't matter a little bit. I mean, it doesn't matter at all. Your whole life hangs on subject and two objects. Right? You are the subject. Again, this is not a command for other people, this is a command for you. You are to love the Lord your God. And that also means that being in proximity to people who are doing that is not the same thing. Being around people who love the Lord your God and love their neighbor as themselves is not the same thing as you loving the Lord. In the same way that in the book of Revelation you read through churches, and some of those churches were really in a pretty rough spot, but then Jesus will mention, but there are some of you, the church is imploding, but there are some of you who hold fast to my name. Being around people who are not doing what they ought to has no reference to you. You are the subject. What are you going to do with your life? God has given you free will and an opportunity to choose for yourself exactly who you are going to be. But you're going to have to figure out what you are going to do with God and what you are going to do with people. What are you going to do about it? Now, there are some options. One of the options that people take all the time is just ignoring. That's not the same as not believing in it. That's another option. But the first option is to just ignore him. Pretend he doesn't exist. After all, the scriptures does make it clear God is invisible. Well, the easiest thing to do with something that is invisible is to just ignore it. Right? That's what I do with my children's imaginary friends. I just ignore them. They can have as many imaginary friends as they want. That is not my problem. I just ignore them. And that's exactly how people treat God. It's not that I don't believe in God. I just live in a way that it's not really a factor. Right? And I would say that, at least in America, that's the majority of people. The majority of people in America, they live like God's not much of a factor. Maybe there are a couple of times a year I ought to think about him. There's some family traditions that are kind of wrapped around religious events. But by and large, I can live my life day in and day out and just act like he isn't. Because he's invisible. The problem is, unlike your kid's invisible friends, God is invisible the same way, I don't know, a tornado is made out of wind and it's invisible. Where atoms are invisible. Where oxygen is invisible. You very much care whether they're there. If I took all of the oxygen out of this room, you would very much care that that invisible thing was gone. What are you going to do about God? He's the source of life itself. In him we live and move and breathe and have our being. What are you going to do about God? And what you choose to do about him will affect everything else, right? Everything hangs off of that, and everything that is elevated will be elevated based off of that. In 1 John chapter 5, he says, "This is the love of God, that we keep his commandments. His commandments are not burdensome." The idea of loving God is based off of the fact that you know that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who seek him. And that based off of the fact that even though he's invisible, he's as real as oxygen. You recognize his authority, and you live accordingly. That he is a God who made you with a purpose, and then gave you sacred writings so that you might know what that purpose is and you can live it. The easiest option for people is to ignore God. That has consequences. And there's degrees of ignoring him too, right? There's the extreme where you just simply, fully, completely deny his existence, say there is no God and there is nothing but just a world of spontaneous accident that exists. That's one extreme. Very few people live in that full extreme. But in that spectrum, you can go all the way over to, oh yes, I'm a Christian. I acknowledge God, I acknowledge the scriptures, but then Monday through Saturday, It's my. And then, for a couple hours on Sunday, we pause, and we talk about God, and then I go right back to my. That may not be the atheist. Be very careful. Because it is functionally not a whole lot different. In John chapter 14, Jesus answered to him, "If a man love me, he will keep my words, and my Father will love him, and we will come to him and make our abode with him." What are you going to do about God? One of the things that we see in a parent relationship, which is what Jesus is referring to here, "Man loves me, he'll keep my words, and my Father will love him, and we'll come to him and make our abode with him." That's Jesus as the Son and the Father will have a dwelling, a home with this person, will make you part of our family. In the family picture and motif of the Bible, imagine a father saying something to his kid and the kid just flat out ignoring them. I just sort of ignore everything that my father says. But I'll still say I love you. It doesn't work that way, does it? The Bible is God's Word. And we should pay attention to it the same way we would expect our children to listen to our voices when we have something to say to them. Now, what do you do about people? What are you going to do about other human beings? Now, there are some options there, too. One is, again, kind of ignore them. Treat them like objects that you need to work around and deal with. Right? They're in your life, but no different than a lamp is or a car. You're driving on the road. When you drive down the road, you're driving with a bunch of people, but chances are most of the time you're not really thinking of them as people. You think of them as kind of vehicles you have to work around. You can spend your whole life treating people like that. They're just objects. You objectify people and just say, okay, yeah, they are things that I manipulate and use to get what I want. I would tell you that amongst other things in the Bible, of which we could spend a lot of time talking, and essentially we spent a year talking, something to consider is that there are 39 one another passages in the New Testament. In the New Testament, there's 39 different times where God talks about one another. Love one another. Serve one another. Help one another. Pray for one another. Confess to one another. What you see pointed out time and time again in the Bible is this relational aspect of the way that you're dealing with human beings, that it is not manipulation, it's not objectifying of people, but it's opening your eyes and realizing other human beings are made in the image of God and they matter to Him too. You have to live your life that way. So when you begin to think that way of people, the next time you get really upset about something and you're going to tell that guy off, you remember that guy belongs to the same God that I belong to. Well, at the same time, next time you get very frustrated with your spouse, or feel like this is never going to get better, you remember that they are made by the same God who made you, and also, by the way, by the same God who invented marriage. And you begin to think of people as one another. As this is a relationship where I'm trying to serve and help and do good and put into this world that God created and then told us to have dominion over something good. So that at the end of my life, the seats are full at the funeral. And look, I'll tell you, that's not really the goal. Right? If when you die, nobody comes to the funeral, that doesn't mean your life is a failure. But there's an idea there, right? That if you have lived a life that is people-oriented, when you die, people have some stuff to say about it. Because you made an impact. When you die, nobody gets up and reads your obituary and offers your stock tips. Or this is what his portfolio was. What matters is the people. can make contact with and you can do good with and you can have one another relationships with in so many different beautiful ways. But ultimately, you're going to have to decide with your life, what am I going to do about people? The third thing is these commandments are instructions for how it ought to be. Right? Whenever God gives a command, you need to understand that that command exists because it won't naturally occur that way. Right? There is no biblical command for you to breathe or eat food. Right? Because, guess what you will naturally do? You will breathe and you will eat food. He does not have to command you to do that thing because you're going to do it. Now, there may be some specifics on how to do those things, but commandments are always when things will not naturally turn out the way they ought to. In Genesis 2, the Lord God said it's not good for man to be alone. There's this principle, right? Loneliness and separation and being by oneself is not a good thing for human beings. Some things are just no good. And when you look at these commandments, love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul. One thing you need to understand is that a life without God is no good. No good. No matter how much you fill it with trinkets and baubles and fun and entertainment, it won't be any good. It's like trying to bake something and you leave out all of the key ingredients. And you're trying to bake a cake and you put in everything except, I don't know, flour. You go, it'll be great. So you're like, there's flourless cakes. Stop it. You know what I'm saying? You leave out a key ingredient. You say, but I put in all this flavoring. And I thought about it, and I put all these things that I like. But you left out the key ingredients. You leave out the leaven. The bread never rises. Life without God is no good. It doesn't matter how many achievements you have and how many other things that you have accomplished. It doesn't even matter if you have good relationships with a whole bunch of people. Life without God is no good. I'll also say a person that mistreats others is no good. Love your neighbor as yourself. If you treat yourself better than you treat everybody else, that's no good. It's not a good way to go through life. It's just a general truth that people who treat others worse than they treat themselves do not have good lives and do not make a positive impact on the world around us. Psalm 73 says, but it is good for me to draw near to God. I put my trust in the Lord God that I may declare all your works. Ecclesiastes 3, I know that there is nothing better for them than to rejoice and to do good in one's lifetime. What if vanity of vanities is the point of Ecclesiastes, then what's the good part? Do good. Draw near to God and do good. Well, how can I do good? Your fellow man. Love your neighbor as yourself. The overarching plan of Christianity was always that you would draw near to God, and then as long as you had breath in your body, you would do good with your life. The fourth is there is only one verb in these commandments. There's only one verb. The verb is love. It's agape. And there are a lot of definitions of agape. And I could easily spend an entire sermon on just all of the details of the definition of that word. And I'm just going to very quickly run through some of them for you. Because if everything hangs from these two commandments to love, and everything is honored and elevated by these two commandments to love, what does it mean to love? It means to have a preference for, or esteem, or honor others. That's one thing it means. I need to start having a preference for other people. You ever sit down for a meal and there's like two different options? We'll inevitably every once in a while have a leftover night in our family. We love leftovers in our family. Leftovers are very important, especially in a big family. But leftover nights are typically a hodgepodge of a variety of different things. And so Jenna will, because she loves me, she will turn to me first and say, okay, here's 4 different leftovers. What do you prefer? And there will always be something I kind of lean towards. I'll eat all of them. After all, they're leftovers. I already did. But I have a preference. Love means you need to start having a preference. And that doesn't mean a preference between people, right? Where, well, I do prefer this person over that person. That's not what that means. It means you need to have preference in your life. If I could spend time doing good for others, or I could spend time on myself, I prefer this. The lifestyle. It also means to love in a moral sense, right? There's a way we use the word love that just talks about a romantic sense or an emotional sense, but agape primarily does not deal with those. It certainly doesn't deal with things like the erotic idea of love or even romantic or even friendship kind of love. It really doesn't deal with that so much as love in a moral and ethical sense. So that I can love my enemy. I don't like my enemy, and he doesn't like me, but I can love him. And in order to love in a moral sense, I need to know what's moral. I need to know what's ethical. And that standard cannot change based off of my feeling because that's not ethics. That's preference to my momentary whim or frustration or irritation or whatever it is. I'm letting my emotions guide me. Love in a moral sense says there's a right way to behave, and it doesn't matter who it is. Whether I am talking to the grocery store clerk, or the IRS auditor, or I'm talking with my spouse, or my kids, or that weird uncle, all of them, there is a moral foundation to how I treat people, and that is the standard. Love God, and to love your neighbor, requires an ethical standard. It also means to regard the welfare of. You have to open your eyes to other people. You have to think about what might they need. And one basic way to do that is to ask, how can I help? But I will tell you, as somebody who has both asked that question and had that question asked of me in times of difficulty, how can I help is oftentimes overwhelming when I'm already overwhelmed. Right? If I've got a giant trauma or difficulty going on in my life and somebody says, how can I help? I know that they want to help, and they get credit for that, but honestly, sometimes I'm already underwater and I don't know how to delegate anything. What I often find are the people who don't ask. They just find something, and they just do it. I'm not saying don't ask the question, how can I help? Not saying that at all. And there will probably be times where you will hear me say the same thing. How can I help? But I want you to consider that that is like level 1. I want us to move beyond that to level 2, 3, 4, and 5, which means I open my eyes for the welfare of others. So that I'm looking for ways I can help without having to directly ask them. Because I will say there's two things in that. Sometimes they don't know. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know how to delegate any of this to you. And sometimes they don't want to ask for help. I don't know about others, but for me, I don't like asking for help. I don't enjoy that process. That's a weakness of mine. I get it. But I'm hoping that I'm not the only one with that weakness, that some of you can sympathize with. So sometimes, I don't ask me how I can help because I'll be like, I got it. And I know you're going to do the same thing. Because it's hard to ask somebody to help you. So just simply begin to have a regard for the welfare of others. Love also means to take pleasure in the thing. That word agape is not devoid of emotion, but it's learning to take pleasure in a thing. And I will say this, you can learn to take pleasure in things that you didn't previously take pleasure in. If you have something that previously you cared nothing about, but then one day you showed an interest in, what you found is that over time you kind of just became curious about it, and you started to gather data about it, and over time that thing that you once knew nothing about became of interest to you because you were curious. Be curious about people. And when you're curious about people and their stories and the kind of individuals they are, you will find you're going to take pleasure in them. And the same is true of God. Don't just say, well, God is. I want to know about it. I want to understand it. It also means to prize something above other things. There needs to be a willingness to sacrifice. It means you are unwilling to or do without it. I refuse to not have God. I refuse to not have people in my life. I refuse to live a life not connected to those two things. And it also means to welcome with desire or longing for. Your relationship with God and with your neighbor cannot be one that is this kind of involuntary thing where you're dragged kicking and screaming. Right? As babies, parents bring their kids into services, and you can tell those kids don't want to be there. They would rather be doing other things. What 2-year-old wants to sit still while Scott Byer talks? Not even his. But someday we hope that changes, right? It becomes a pivot. Where all of a sudden, as we reach maturity, you begin to welcome and desire the opportunity to be with people, to be with God, to learn about Him, and to serve Him. 1 John chapter 2, verse 15 says, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. I will say this, if we're going to love the Lord our God with all our heart and soul and mind and strength, you're going to have to let go of something. Because truly, to love God and our neighbor, you only have two hands, and if they're full of this world, you're going to have to drop some stuff. It's just the way it is. You can't have it all. But I will say this. You have God, you have all you need. He is so very good. Go back to that reading that we started with. Remember what he said in Deuteronomy 10? Remember how he told them, this isn't what I require of you, but then he reminds them, once were 70 people. Now you are as numerous as the stars of the heaven. That's how the church grows. That's how our families grow. That's how the Lord's work gets done. We follow Him, we let our lives hang on Him, and elevate Him through love, and good things happen. Because the Lord is good. He has always had a plan. His plan is always better than ours. At this time, sermon belongs to you. And at this point, really, the year belongs to you. We spent a year talking about this subject. You are not a Christian. The Lord already loves you. But will you draw near? If you're ready to be back, please come forward as we stand and sing.